Go ahead, Stan.
Oh, sorry. I'm just going to let you know, I have a declaration of conflict of interest for item 1, panel 2.
You do?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
It's it's 381, 380, 3861, 3865 Old Richmond Road. I'm a member of the board of the Nonprofit Housing Corporation, who's been hired as project manager for the project. So I'm just letting you know.
Yeah. You ready to proceed? I think everybody's on. Maybe not. No. You there, Mr. Garnett?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I believe we're ready to proceed.
Okay. We shall begin. Good afternoon and welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. The Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of applications under the Planning Act. My name is John Blatherwick and I'll be chairing this hearing. Today, along with me are my fellow panel members, Bonnie Oak Charon, Stan Wilder, Heather McLean, and Michael Wildman. Please take note that this video conference is being live streamed on YouTube. The video will be archived along with today's agenda on the city's website. Before we begin, we have a few items to outline for your information. While the issues surrounding development in the city are broad, our mandate is quite limited. The committee cannot consider aspects of the proposal that are not related to the required variances, noise, pollution, property maintenance, property values, prosecution for illegal construction, personal comments regarding neighbors, agents, or applicants, additional variances without proper public notice. If there is an identified need for an additional variance or variances, including an increase in the extent of the relief required, a recirculation of the application is required. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. This declaration must be on file today before we can hear the application. We have received a number of these, but the majority have not been received. We don't have confirmation on the rest of them, so I will have to administer an oath to the applicants and or the agent at the beginning of those particular items. Regarding quorum, if this is lost during the hearing due to technical difficulties, the proceedings will be paused to allow time for the resolution of the issue. Failing the ability to reinstate quorum, hearing of the items remaining will resume at the outset of the next regularly scheduled meeting of the committee. In terms of the hearing process, listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Note that the committee members have reviewed the application materials prior to this hearing and any written submissions received in support or in opposition. In addition, the committee will hear today oral submissions from any interested parties as part of our proceedings. The committee may ask for a brief presentation by the applicant, followed by questions from the members where clarification may be needed. The public submissions portion of the hearing will then begin, and any interested parties will be invited to make their submissions to the committee. Panel members may then ask follow-up questions where additional clarification may be required. When you are called upon to provide your comments, we will ask you to do the following. Start with stating your name and municipal address for the record. We may ask you to spell your name. Then begin your submission by addressing your comments to the panel members. You may ask questions, but please direct them only to the chair. Please limit your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the committee's discretion. Once all interested parties have had an opportunity to address the panel, the public submissions portion of the hearing will then be closed. The committee will then make an oral decision to either grant or deny the application. The committee may also choose to reserve its decision. In such case, the panel will deliberate further on the evidence presented immediately following adjournment of the public hearing. In either case, the committee will send within 10 days of its decision, and to all parties and those who have requested it, a written decision that sets out the reasons for the decision. All decisions of the committee are subject to a 20-day appeal period during which the decision can be appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal for a fee. And before we begin the agenda, are there any declarations of interest for any of us on this panel and for this, either this hearing or the other two hearings today? Mr. Wilder?
I have a declaration, item 1 on panel 2, 3861, 3865 Old Richmond Road, the Anglican Church Diocese. I'm a member of the board of the Nonprofit Housing Corporation, who have been retained as project manager for the redevelopment and the expansion. So I declare interest on that.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. We have no minutes to confirm, so we will move on to the adjournment requests, and there are a number that the planning department has made and others that we also have identified. Bear with me a second, I have to close my door. All right. The first application for adjournment is item number 188 Merton Street. And the request for adjournment was made by the planning department. If they could articulate that request, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the reason for the adjournment, it's because during the review, I identified an extra variance pertaining to the canopy. The canopy is within 0.33 meters of the side yard setback, which will need relief, which was not identified on the original variance.
Okay. Is the agent there by any chance? Mr. Helder? Mr. Helder?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, it just restarted for some reason. I'm not sure. Yeah, so that was my mistake there. I was of the understanding that
Before we begin, I'm going to have to administer the oath to you.
Sure, yes.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You're aware of the department's request for adjournment. Do you have any comments, Mr. Helder?
Yeah, my only comment, that's fine. I'm okay with the time. I was just really hoping that I wouldn't have to pay the extra fee there to redo this. My reason for that is I thought since the existing house already infringed on that that side yard, I didn't think it was necessary to note it. But yeah, I do understand why it needs to be on there.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're going to have to pay for that. And what we will do, I think, is we're going to have to recirculate the application with the additional variance. And I think it's probably best to, as far as timing, is to set this sine die so that when you have your materials ready, we will then you can resubmit, and we will then schedule a hearing at some point in the future.
So I'll have to join another one of these. So how much is the fee?
I believe it's, what is it again, Mr. Adam Coordinator or Deputy Secretary Treasurer?
Mr. Chair, the recirculation fee for a variance application is $662.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, we will adjourn this sine die. All in favor of adjourning sine die to a later date? All right. Thank you, Mr. Helder. We'll see you We'll see you hopefully shortly.
Thank you.
The next item up for adjournment, and again, this is a request by the planning department, is for 69 Mackay. And I believe Mr. Ferguson is the applicant. The department like to articulate that request, please?
The reason for the request, Mr. Chair, is that during the review, there was an additional variance identified, which pertains to the carport's proximity to the principal dwelling, and that was not identified. Additionally, the original variance was to reduce the side yard setback as per the residential dwelling requirement, but given that the carport is an accessory structure, the reduction of the side yard setback or the proximity of the carport to the side yard should be under the section 55, table 55, which are the provisions for the carport.
Okay. All right. I believe we have Ms. Thompson online as well.
Yes,
Okay,
Can you hear
and I'm going to have to administer the oath before we have any discussions. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
So you're aware of the department's request, and are you in agreement?
Yes, I am. And I would just ask that we've discussed the required variances and are prepared to resubmit this week. So I would ask if it could be adjourned to the next possible date to allow for the circulation for the benefit of my clients who are elderly and are hoping to get this carport in place before there's danger of slip and fall during the winter.
But Mr. Garnett, is there any room on a pending hearing? You're sure you're going to submit this week, Ms. Thompson?
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Chair, we would be currently processing applications for October 21st. And if we received principally the payment as well as, of course, the revised materials this week, we would be scheduling for that hearing in any event. So that would be the nearest opportunity.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
So we set this back to the 21st of October.
Thank
All
you.
in favor of adjourning the application until the 21st of October? Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you.
Okay. The next application that is up for an adjournment request, again from the planning department, are items 10 and 11, 472, 474 Cole Avenue. And again, if the department would like to articulate their request for an adjournment.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can. Upon review of the first set of plans that were submitted, I identified the need for an additional variance in the rear yard, a setback of 9.67 meters had been shown, whereas the zoning requires a setback of approximately 10 meters. I advised the applicant of this and they committed to correct this on their plans, which they did.
Okay, yes, got it. And you've reviewed the revised site plan?
I have.
And so is the department's view that we no longer need this adjournment?
That's correct. Yeah, if the members of the committee feel that they've had enough time to review it themselves, then the department will proceeding.
All right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Nato. Ladies and gentlemen, do we proceed with this application today, given that there is no issue regarding an additional variance anymore? Everybody's okay with that? Okay, all right. We will step this down into the order and proceed. Thank you very much. There are a number of other applications on the agenda that may need to be adjourned as well. And what I'm requesting is the agent for items 8 and 9, 241 Furland Street. Please make themselves available. I believe it's Mr. Bede.
Hello.
Mr. Bede.
Hi. Sorry, it takes a second to log up there.
Are you aware of Hydro's comments? And I'll paraphrase that the proposal will conflict with the overhead wires
I am aware of that.
as
comment.
it is designed. Yes.
Yes.
Therefore, it would be extremely difficult to be granted a building permit given Hydro's comments. Have you folks had a discussion with Hydro? Has the issue been resolved?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that discussion is ongoing.
Okay.
We have obtained legal advice on the matter and believe that as the hydro wires and hydro infrastructure is not physically on the subject property, that we can proceed on that basis as we continue the discussions about the applicability of the hydro setback requirements from their infrastructure.
So you don't feel that there's a necessity to adjourn this application today?
Mr. Chair, no, we do not feel that that's the necessity. We feel that a solution can be found and arrived upon based on discussions with Hydro, with the property owner, and determining the most appropriate course of action in terms of the interface between that infrastructure and the proposed building. The hydro infrastructure is in the public right of way and not on the subject property. There is a setback from the property line of the hydro infrastructure as well as to the building of close to 3 meters. The hydro guidelines suggest a 5-meter setback from their high voltage infrastructure. As I've mentioned, through discussions with legal team and discussions with Hydro Ottawa, we're still working on a solution that would allow the building to be constructed as is proposed in a way that Hydro Ottawa feels comfortable with the proximity to their infrastructure.
So there has been no resolution to this issue.
As it stands, it's an ongoing discussion.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I don't think the committee would be very comfortable dealing with this application when that discussion or those discussions have not completed and you folks haven't come to some sort of a compromise or a decision on this. Mr. Wildman?
You took the words right out of my mouth, Mr. Chair. I'm comfortable with your rendition of how I feel anyways, is that absent of confirmation from Hydro, I would not support moving forward.
Anyone else on the committee have a comment on this? I think it would be prudent for us to adjourn this application sine die until such time as this issue has been resolved, and then we can have a full discussion at a future date.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I had my hand up, but I was asking if I could comment on this because I'm working with Tim on the file. It's Brian Casagrande.
Mr. Casagrande.
Mr. Chair, we've had a lot of discussions with Gowlings over I guess in general, the whole issue of hydro setbacks as it applies to development proposals. And Mr. Paulowin's had some ongoing discussions with their legal team. And what he shared with us is that they've generally agreed that Hydro does not have the legal authority to require additional setbacks, despite the fact that their guidelines stipulate it, unless the city's bylaw already requires the setback. In other words, unless we're reducing that particular setback, or if they've got other legal means such as an easement that gives them that right. And so those discussions have been, I guess I'd call it, fruitful in that regard. And I asked Mr. Paulin about this before the hearing because I anticipated this concern would arise. And his position to me that he, respectfully asked me to convey to you was that the committee didn't have the legal authority to deny hearing or even rule on an application before them in the face of Hydro's request. In other words, they're a commenting agency just like a neighbor would be, and they shouldn't be given any other additional rights, if you will, that a neighbor might otherwise have.
Mr. Wild, thank you, Mr. Casagrande. Mr. Wilder, you had a comment? You're muted, Mr. Wilder.
I would prefer to see something in writing. I guess Mr. Wildman would feel the same way, and maybe the others, I don't know, but I understand what you're saying, Mr. Casagrande. But until I see something in writing that's basically, confirms what you're saying, and I'd like to see something from Hydro. I'd like to see this matter resolved. I feel uncomfortable processing this application at this time. Also, I'd just like to mention, I don't know, in light of comments that have come in from the Vanier Community Association, just as an aside, I'm not sure if you did, but I would appreciate, if you didn't, to have a meeting with them because they have a number of concerns as well. Thank you.
Ms. McLean, any comments?
I'm wondering if a 2-week adjournment might be advisable to see if we could get, or if Mr. Casagrande could get something in writing from Hydro. On the other hand, we also have the ability to attach a condition should the committee hear the application and decide to approve it. A condition requiring Hydro's approval of the development or along those lines. So I think we could consider both avenues, and I wonder if the agents would consider a 2-week adjournment.
Mr. Casagrande and Mr. Bede?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we'd be fine with a 2-week adjournment. We certainly connect with the Vanier Community Association because we didn't know about their comments prior to today, although I think Mr. Bede would tell you that we did ask the owner to consult with his adjacent neighbors, and they've both written in support of the application. So we're happy to do that. On the Hydro front, we're happy to have continued discussions with them. But I guess I just want the committee to understand that my full expectation is that they're not going to be supportive of a reduction. This has always been a long, drawn out affair when dealing with Hydro on these matters. And the owner does recognize that there's a certain degree of, legal resolution that has to be had moving forward. And that if at any point in time, he was going to be forbidden from developing the project as designed, coming out of that discussion, that would have to return to the committee with potentially revised plans. As I said, that's not been the legal advice that he's gotten from the beginning on this. So that's my only concern, is that I don't think we're going to get a resolution of this issue with Hydro other than to say that they're still opposed to the setback that we're asking for. But we can certainly ask them to restate their position or consider a reduction. I just don't think we're going to be able to have that in hand for, my prediction, honestly, is many months.
Has anyone had any discussion at all with city legal on this matter?
We've had discussion with city planning staff, as high up as Mr. Diaco. And the general position of the city was that they understand that that's a matter that we will have to address, moving forward outside of the committee. In other words, he was also of the view that they didn't need to be the committee didn't need to be considering this matter any differently as I've categorized it to a neighbor. And that moving forward, just like the private approach bylaw, for example, we'll have to make sure that we're able to build and satisfy any additional approvals of that nature.
Yeah, well, frankly, I'd be a lot more comfortable if I had a piece of paper in my hand. And I think the rest, I can't speak for everybody else on the committee, but I think we'd all be happier having some position from, well, the planning department is fine, but let's hear from the legal department of the city as well. You know, I mean, certainly comments from Mr. Pollan and company would also be taken into account. I think, quite frankly, that since this seems to be happening, this is not the first time, I'm assuming, that there needs to be a resolution to these kinds of issues so that we can resolve them for once and for all. Anyway, I think the best course of action is to push this back to what is it, Mr. Garnett, to October 21st? Or are we earlier than that?
Mr. Chair, the next available meeting date would be October 7th, and following that would be the 21st.
Can you get this issue resolved, gentlemen, by the for a hearing on the 7th of October?
Mr. Blatherwick, I think I can certainly get a legal opinion from staff and a legal opinion from the city's lawyer. And then, as I mentioned, I can meet with Vanier and I can see if any more resolution can be had from Hydro.
Okay, so why don't we set the date for October the 7th then?
That'd be fine with me.
Okay. All in favor of an adjournment until the 7th of October? We are adjourned until that date. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, where else have we got here? Second. The next item that may require, or I think actually it does require an adjournment, is item number 13, 340 Osgood Street. Is the who is the Mr. Moyer, I believe, is the agent for that application, if he's there. Perhaps if planning staff could comment on the error.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Through reviewing the application, it was noted that there was discrepancies between the application form that outlined the required variances and the notice. Two of the variances had wording mistakes. The first one was in relation to the increase in the total area of the carport, where on the notice it said that the applicant was seeking an increase of more than 50% of the total area of the property, where the application and the zoning bylaw, it says 50% of the total area of the yard in which the carport is located, which in this case would have been the rear yard. Additionally, the second error was in relation to, just give me a second, I have to look into it. I believe it was regarding the extension of the carport farther than the wall of the corner of the property line. The notice said that it was requesting the building to be farther 1.5 meters from the existing building, where the actual variance is to permit the carport expand 1.5 meters from the wall of the principal dwelling.
Thank you. Mr. Moyer, can I get your address, please, for the record?
Yes, of course, 340 Osgood Street.
Okay, and before we begin, I have to get the solemn declaration from you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do so swear and have just sent my declaration as well.
Okay. So you're aware of the fact that the notice went out misworded. It was an articulation error.
Yes.
And we feel that it's necessary to recirculate the application so that the wording is actually correct.
Okay.
And the committee will be paying for this. So there'll be no cost to your applicant. Mr. Garnett, how soon can we get this on an agenda?
Again, Mr. Chair, just under the Planning Act timelines for circulation, the soonest we can meet is October 21st.
Okay.
We would move forward immediately, but that is the nearest possible date we can circulate for.
Okay. So to meet our requirements to inform the public correctly, which we did not do with the first application, we're going to have to recirculate, and that means we'll be back before us on the 21st of October. And again, there's no cost to your applicant for this. And we're sorry about that, but it does happen from time to time. And we need to be consistent.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And with full respect to the process, I'm sure I'll gladly comply. It is unfortunate. I'm happy to present now, and obviously I've had to take time out of my work to go and set up the signage for the last time. I'll do it again this time. And very confident that we have an application that is well understood by our neighbors and our community association, and hopefully is one that you will receive well. And so want to make sure the process is as appropriate and above board as possible. So
again, our apologies.
Sorry.
Okay. I said, and again, our apologies, but we need to do this to make it correct. Anyway. All right, so we're going to recirculate, and you'll be back before us on the 21st of October. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
And the final application, which might need an adjournment or a recirculation, is item number 14 on the agenda, 178 Carruthers Avenue. I believe Mr. Bays from Stantec is the agent, the agent for the applicant on this item.
I am here, Mr. Chair. Eric Bays. Let me just turn on video as well.
Okay. All right. Again, I've got to administer the oath, Mr. Bays. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
All right. Materials were delivered to us, I believe, last night, correct?
They were, yes.
Which is, by the way, Mr. Bays, very late in the process.
I acknowledge that.
And before we begin this discussion, exactly what, if you could please articulate, are the revisions?
Certainly.
Do they require more variances?
They do not require any more variances, Mr. Chair, although I will have to leave it in your hands to determine what the outcome would be. There's two changes that were made. Those changes are based on discussions with the community association, as well as the feedback received from the committee discussion at our last hearing. The first is that the building was moved further north on the site to increase the interior side yard setback on the south side. This is to address community related concerns that were raised as a result of clarification at the last hearing. The second item is regarding the rear yard balconies. We've been working with the architect to try and figure out a way that we can recess the balconies in order to address committee concerns as well, community concerns, and we've recessed the balconies an additional 0.4 meters into the buildings, as well as clarified glazing and privacy glazing on the south and the north side of the balconies.
Right. That side yard, southern side yard setback has been changed from 1.53 meters to what?
To 186 meters.
1.86. So that's an increase in the setback. That's an increase in the setback of the southerly side yard?
That's correct.
Okay. So those are the only revisions that we are looking at.
At this time, yes.
Yes. And has the planning department seen these revisions?
I would have to defer to Mr. Nadeau on that and Mr. Garnett.
Mr. Nadeau?
These revisions are new to me, Mr. Chair. I haven't seen any of this.
So we have revisions to your site plan, which the people in the planning department have not had the opportunity to review. Has the Hintonburg Community Association seen these revisions?
They have not seen the actual site plans. However, I did speak with Ms. Perot from the Community Association on Monday to inform her that we were making those revisions to the site plan.
But she hasn't actually seen what you intend to do.
Admittedly, no.
Or what do you intend to change? You just, this is a telephone conversation, I'm assuming.
It was. All of the information that we're speaking, though, to right now was provided.
Okay. I don't know about the rest of the committee, but I'm not comfortable if the planning department has not had these materials and reviewed them. We rely on their sage advice on these applications. And I quite frankly feel that this application needs to be adjourned until such time as the community has actually seen it, not just heard about it. And the planning department has looked at the revisions and may or may not comment. They may be fully in agreement, but we don't know because they haven't seen those applications, that change in the site plan yet. Oh, I think we should push this back. And again, I think the earliest we can probably go is October the 21st, Mr. Garnett.
Mr. Chair, on behalf of staff, if I could just clarify, is as a result of moving the building to the north, are we aggravating, so to speak, the reduced northerly side yard setback? The two non-discretionary reasons why an application would have to be adjourned for recirculation is if we're adding a new variance, or as you said in your opening remarks, if we're increasing the extent of a variance. So I'm just wondering if the change on the southerly side yard sounds like it's moving towards compliance, but we may be moving further away on the north side.
You would be, that's Mr. Garnett, or through the chair, Mr. Garnett is correct in that we have shifted the building to the north. So that the goal of that was to try and increase compliance on the south side, but Mr. Garnett is correct. It does result in a net reduction on the north. Our opinion was that this is adjacent to an open space and infrastructure facility, so the impact would be negligible.
Well, our hands are tied. You made a change to the variance on the north side yard. This will have to be recirculated.
Acknowledged.
And with the recirculation, what can we still get this on for the 21st of October?
Mr. Chair, from staff perspective, I believe we'd have time provided.
Or would it be better to just adjourn this sine die?
The implications on the applicant would be the same, provided we can get payment and the specific dimension for the northerly side yard setback as soon as possible this week, ideally.
Mr. Bays?
I believe we can get, I mean, the revised plans are at the committee now. I can arrange with the client for payment. I would expect Friday. I'll need to speak to him. He's currently out of country.
Okay. All right. All right, Mr. Bays. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I do believe that the applicant is in attendance at the hearing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. George, is it Mr. or Miss Georgie?
It's Mr. Georgie.
Mr. Georgie, does you wish to speak?
Hanny, if you can hear me, if you have any comments or would like to add anything, you're welcome to approach the chair. I will assume that's a no
Okay.
or technical challenges.
All right, what we'll do then is all in favor of adjourning this application to the 21st of October?
Can you hear me?
There we have, that's Mr. Georgie.
Mr. Georgie,
Are you able to waive the fee this time, sir?
I'm able, yes, I can hear you.
Are you able to waive the fees this time?
I don't see a reason why we should waive the fees. You're reducing, you've changed your north side, your northern side yard setback. And this is this recirculation fee, I think we'll have to apply.
Okay, all right.
All right. Okay, so all in favor of pushing this back until the 21st of October? Hearing. All right. The application is adjourned until the 21st of October. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. All right. We'll now proceed with the remaining applications in the regular agenda. Just let me get this going here. Begin with item number 2 on the agenda, 309 Oakdale. And this is an application for minor variances to permit a reduced lot width and area, reduced rear yard setback and rear yard area, increased projection for a bay window, as well as an increased garage door width. The owner wishes to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a new 2-story detached dwelling. And I believe on this item, we have Bria Aird as the agent.
Here to speak.
Hi. Can I have your address, please?
396 Cooper Street.
All right. If you'd like to make your presentation, please, Ms. Baird.
Yes, absolutely. If it could be pulled up on the screen.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to note that Kirsten Neach, also a senior, also planner at FOTEN, Tina Trainey, the owner, and Lara McKendrick, the project architect, are listening in and can answer questions if necessary.
Okay. That's fine.
So the proposed development is a new detached home which replaces an existing detached home. The property is zoned R1MM. And the proposal complies with the majority of the zoning provisions, including the streetscape character group. But relief from several provisions is required. So I'll just take us through them. Slide 2, please. So the first 2 requested variances, as you can see, are to provide relief from the minimum lot area and lot width. The second set of requested variances are from the rear yard. So as you can see, there's an angled rear yard setback, and relief is requested from that. As a result of that, we're also requesting relief for projection of the bay window into the rear yard.
Okay.
And I should note that this site plan was submitted on Monday. The only change is a reduced curb cut and clarifying the single driveway and extent of the core grass. Slide 3. And the final variance, the 5th variance, is to requested to allow a wider garage door. So a single driveway is permitted and proposed. Now, typically, you can have a garage door that's up to 3 meters in width if you're allowed a single driveway, and up to 6 meters in width if you're permitted a double driveway. We're requesting 5.1 meter wide garage door, although as you can see, the visual impact of the from the street is more of a narrower door, a 4.9 meter door, just because the facade on which that door is located is angled.
And your curb cut's been reduced from what to what?
The curb cut, so the existing curb cut, I think, is 4.7 meters or thereabouts. And at the request of staff in the staff report, we are reducing that to a 3 meter curb cut.
So it's a 3 meter curb cut. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So if we can move to slide 4, just to discuss the lot context. So there's a fairly consistent lot pattern along and around the subject property. However, there is an angled rear lot line for the lots along Oakdale Avenue. And this creates an interesting condition with regards to the rear yard setbacks. So as you can see from this, there's not a consistent pattern of rear yard setbacks across the entire street, but they're angled and offset. So in this context, it's our opinion that the impact of the requested rear yard variances, both with respect to rear yard setback and projection of the bay window, will have a minimal or minor impact. And it should also be noted that the lot width and size are fairly consistent with what is seen in the area for dwellings of this type. And if we can move to the next slide. Any potential impact from the requested rear yard variances is also minimized by the fact that we're only requesting them for the ground floor. So any concerns about potential impacts or overlook are mitigated. The next slide, please. So with respect to the requested garage door variances, the desire is to have a minimal impact on the streetscape consistent with a single driveway, which is what is permitted. So a number of design measures have been implemented to try to achieve that. So first of all, only a single driveway is provided as required. There is a drive over grass product, as shown in the upper right image, a core grass, that will allow access to the full width of the garage door, but without having any impact in visual impact or sort of impact in terms of impermeable surfaces. The garage is set back from the front facade, and it's inset under the second floor, angled so that it's between 1 and 3 meters from the front facade. So that also reduces the impact. And then finally, rather than have 2 garage doors, a single garage door is used.
Okay.
So as you can see from the images of other homes along this stretch of Oakdale, there is a diversity of driveway and garage types, and there are existing double driveways in the area. I think it's also important to note that the existing driveway is the existing drive pad, and it functions as a front yard parking pad, is about 4.7 meters wide. So we are reducing relative to the existing condition. So given these factors, it's our opinion that the requested garage door variance complies with the intent of the zoning bylaw and is minor in impact and is appropriate. And just in closing, I do want to note that the owners conducted outreach with their neighbors and received a number of letters of support, which were forwarded to the committee.
Yes, thank you. We note that. those letters. Okay, the planning department had some concerns with this application.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The department has no concerns with the requirement for lot width, lot area, the rear yard setback, as well as the bay window. However, the department has some concerns with regards to the increase of the size of the garage door, mainly noting that it will not meet the streetscape character. Mainly, the homes along Oakdale have either driveways that have cars parked on the side, or they appear to have single car garage doors. Additionally, the department had some concerns with the curb cut that seeing new drawings today, it seems like that has been reduced, but the concern was regarding to how perhaps having a garage door that it's double could lead to more cars being parked on the front yard.
Comment on that, Ms. Bria?
Yes, I'd say, and obviously the zoning and the community's decision, I mean, people will use, can't control use, but I would say that the desire of the owners is to avoid parking in the front yard. They'd like to be able to access their garage and park both of their vehicles without sort of tandem parking and shuffling. So at least in terms of the intent, it is to reduce sort of the visual impact of car parking on the street.
Do we have the latest site plan that shows the revised driveway configuration?
Yes, what's on slide 2, that's probably the easiest.
Possibly take a look at that again.
So as you can see, there's a single 3-meter wide driveway that goes from the street to approximately the center of the garage door. And then this square hatch is the core grass product. So that'll look pretty much just like a lawn.
So from the points of this core grass material to the street, the paved surface is 3 meters wide.
That's right.
Which makes it a little difficult to park tandem unless you're parking on the lawn.
Yes, no, it's a drive over grass product, but not intended for having long-term parking on it.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Wilder, you had a comment?
Just a comment. You know, I have a concern, I guess. It's something that planning didn't pick up on, but your client is looking at 2 vehicles, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You're aware of the proximity of the redevelopment of this lot, the new home to the new LRT station, the new LRT line, right?
I am, yes.
I mean, this is something your own firm has argued many a time that, you know, where, you know, we have a requirement for parking sometimes, and well, you know, but you're in such close proximity to the LRT. I can see one car. Why the need for 2 vehicles? I understand that they're going through the area, that there's some older homes, certainly before the LRT came into existence and the like. But and obviously those double drives, 2 cars have existed. But in terms of a redevelopment of a property, is there a necessity now with the LRT? And I see Ms. Nietzsche has a comment as well, I suspect. Is there a need for 2 vehicles considering the proximity to the LRT? Thank you.
Thanks. Kristen, did you want to speak to this, or I can also speak to it?
Bria, go ahead, and then I can add in if I need to.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'd say as a planner, I'm definitely always encourage, you know, reduced parking and not imposing sort of parking minimums in proximity to LRT, but we're talking about, I guess, the private decisions and behavior of people, and people do have a right to use their property. So in this context, the framework that I'm looking at is a situation in which the owners can park both their cars in their garage, preferable, or and what impact would that have on the streetscape versus a situation where we don't ask for that variance and there's still the same width of garage facade facing the road, and there's much greater likelihood of there being sort of front yard parking. So that is the perspective that I'm taking as a planner.
Just Mr. Wilder, I'll add into, I think we're considering that these are the homeowners, they're the current longtime homeowners. And, they could probably speak to how long they've lived there and, their neighborhood. But, this isn't, they're not looking to tear down their house, build a new house and then flip it to somebody else. So we do have to consider their current situation. And we're not going to ask homeowners to get rid of a car because they'd like to update their house. They're not looking to sell this house. This is for them. They'd like to continue living there, and they happen to have 2 cars. And as Bria has mentioned, right now they're parked in a two side-by-side front yard parking gravel pad. So, this is an opportunity for them to accommodate their current situation with 2 cars, but in an enclosed space, and actually minimizing that impact by setting those cars into a garage further back from the front property line, and actually minimizing the hard surface and reducing the curb cut. So, when you consider it all together, like Bria said, of course, supporting transit is definitely a position that myself, Bria, and our coworkers support. But in this case, we have to consider the context and the owner's preferences.
Okay. Any other, Mr. Wildman, you had a comment?
So in terms of the 4 tests, I have 2 questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In terms of the 4 tests, how do you reconcile the need for the additional driveway or the additional car to be parked in the garage? So specifically the official plan policies. Have you looked at that?
Well, the official plan policies don't, I would say, provide specific guidance on how individuals in detached homes should park their cars. Obviously, there are policies that support reduction of parking, but I think it's important to clarify that when we're talking about provision of parking, we're not asking for an increase in the number of permitted parking spaces or an increase in the size of the garage. We're asking for a doorway configuration on that garage that will facilitate easier parking for the clients. So in terms of, whether they could fit 2 cars in that garage with a lot of maneuvering around, that would be very inconvenient. Well, that's sort of outside of what we're asking for. We're just looking at that access configuration. And again, we are only asking, as is already permitted by the bylaw, for a single driveway. So with respect to the 4 tests, I would say it's in conformity with the policies of the OP and in compliance with the intent of the zoning bylaw.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that in just 1 second.
Sure.
Does planning staff have anything to add about Mr. Wilder's comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do recognize that the lot is fairly close to the LRT. I would also note that as per the zoning bylaw, there's no requirement for parking to be provided for any homes that are not up to 12 dwelling units. So in this case, the owner had chosen to provide a parking space. With regards to the regards to the wider car garage that will permit 2 cars to perhaps fit into the actual garage, the department still has a bit of concerns, given that most of the time people don't tend to park into garages. They usually park on driveways. I understand there's core grass that sort of tapers out, and the driveway, it's paved all the way for 3 meters. We still have concerns as to perhaps 1 car being parked on the side and still having that visual impact of 2 cars.
Thank you. Before we leave this topic, Mr. Chair, I would like to hear the representations on all 4 tests, please. Could I just a question on variance D? Are we able to put something up? I'd just like to see that visually just for 1 second, please. Just like to see the impact of the bay window.
I think that was slide 5 or possibly slide 2.
So looking at the projection, if possible. Okay, thank you. Yeah, just I would like to hear the discussion on the floor test, Mr. Chair. On the parking issue with respect to the possibility of being parked out front, with respect to the planning department's position, I'm not too troubled by that. I do hear Mr. Wilder's points though, and good planning is always to look for ways to encourage use on transit. But with that, I'll just ask for the delegation to walk us through the floor test, please.
All right, well, with respect to all of the variances or just specifically the rear yard?
All of them, please.
All of them, okay. Well, with respect to lot width and area, the official plan encourages provision of a diversity of housing types throughout the general urban area. What we're proposing is a detached dwelling, which is a permitted type, replacing a detached dwelling. So it's my opinion that that is in conformity with the intent of the official plan, as well as the intent of the zoning bylaw, which again permits a detached home. We could go to the slide 6, which shows the consistent lotting pattern along Oakdale Avenue. The impact will be minor as it is the same use or placing a same use and appropriate to allow the development of land. With respect to the rear yard variances, if we could go to slide 4 again. The intent, I would say, of the official plan, and more particularly the zoning bylaw with rear yard variances and limitations on permitted projections into the rear yard, is to protect a consistent pattern of rear yard setbacks as shown by this image. Because of the angled lot configuration there, that pattern is a jagged pattern, and there's not a clear line across all of the lots. As you can see, the proposed rear line of the house is angled to match the permitted setback, but just set a little further into that rear yard. And I would say that is still in compliance with the intent of the zoning bylaw, and the impact will be minimal as perceived by neighbors, and included in that is the fact that, again, it is only a projection for the ground floor. The bay window only projects about 0.5 meters from the rear yard of the house. The wording of the zoning bylaw is that a bay window may project a maximum of 0.5 meters into a required rear yard on a lot that's 30 meters in depth or less. So that's what the bay window is doing on this. We've just obviously are projecting slightly into the rear yard, so we need to account for that for the bay window. And so again, just to restate, the impact is minor and is appropriate in this context for that development. And then finally, just to go back to the garage door variance, there is, I would say, an overall intent in the official plan to I'd say encourage lower impacts with respect to parking. The streetscape character analysis and the zoning for this property permit a single driveway, which is what is provided. The wider garage door has a number of design features to minimize the visual impact on the street, and the intended use of the driveway and garage will have that effect. And so in my opinion, that complies with the intent of the zoning bylaw is minor relative to what is permitted in terms of impact and is appropriate in this scenario.
Thank you, and thank you for answering those questions, Mr. Chair. All my questions have been answered.
I note that that Forestry Services has commented there's a city-owned distinctive sugar maple located on the city right away in front of the residents, and that they need a tree disclosure report at time of building permit. You're aware of that, I take it?
Yes.
And along with the mitigation plan, obviously. Standard stuff from Hydro, the comment or to comment or connect with them before undertaking construction. Are we prepared to vote on this application as amended by the changes to the site plan and the driveway configuration? Or do we wish to reserve?
I'm comfortable voting now, Mr. Chair, but certainly in the hands of the rest of the committee.
Okay.
I'm ready to vote.
Okay.
Also
Mr. Wilder?
ready.
Mr. Wilder?
I'm prepared to vote. I'm going to dissent on variance E.
You took the words out of my mouth. I'm also prepared to vote, and I have no problems with A, B, C, and D, but I am going to dissent on variance E. Ms. McLean?
I'm in favor of all the variances.
Okay. Mr. Wildman?
I am in favor of all variances.
Ms. Cheryl?
Yes, I'm in favor of all of the variances.
All right. So with that, the application is approved as filed. Good luck with your project, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next application on the agenda is item 3, 455 Wilbrod. I believe we have Miss McDonald on as the agent. Are you there, Miss McDonald?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'll have to do the solemn declaration to begin. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
Okay. This application for minor variances to permit the existing windows to face onto the western property line, as well as an increased gross floor area for a coach house unit. The owner wants to renovate the existing detached garage and add a second-story accessory apartment. So if you would like to give us your presentation on the application, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. If I can have the photos that I submitted to committee shared. So, Mr. Chair and committee, I do want to advise that we will be withdrawing one of the variances for the windows on the west wall. We have seen the correspondence from Mr. Migueles, our neighbor, and had conversations with him, and we have agreed that those western windows, which exist today in the structure, will be bricked in as part of the renovation of the building. So we are now seeking only the single variance, which is for the floor area of the accessory unit.
So the application has been amended to delete variance A.
That's correct.
Okay. So all we have left to deal with is to permit an increased gross floor area of 92 square meters for the coach house, whereas the bylaw permits a coach house to have a maximum gross floor area of 80 square meters.
Yes.
Okay, please proceed.
So thank you. So just to begin, the building, it's an existing coach house building. It was built in the late 19th century, and it has served as a coach house since that time. It sits within the Sandy Hill Heritage Conservation District, and the primary house facing Wilbrod has been identified as a Class 1 building. So if you look at the photos, this one photo is the eastern elevation of the existing coach house, looking from Coburg Street. On the right-hand side, you're looking at the southern elevation of the coach house, which faces Wilbrod, but which is set back significantly from Wilbrod. So it in fact is behind the rear wall of the primary dwelling. The next set of photos. So here you're looking on the left-hand side, you're looking at the western wall of the coach house, which does sit on the property line where the windows are that our neighbor asked us to consider bricking in. This faces the parking lot at the Austrian Embassy and the rear yard of Mr. Migueles, who faces onto Stewart Street. On the right-hand side, the property on Wilbrod has a bit of a dogleg that goes out and creates a through lot to Stewart Street. This is the view from Stewart Street. It's the northern elevation of the building. You can see the coach house, the original coach house in behind. But in the 80s, there was a small garage structure that was attached to the coach house, which also is used for storage space and is on part of the 455 Wilbrod property.
Okay.
So just moving to, I don't want to go through everything. I'm sure the committee members have read the materials, but if we can quickly go to the plans that were submitted as part of the application. I'm not going to go through all of them. If we can skip to the site plan, which is A01. So on this site plan, you can see the frontage on Wilbrod Street, the footprint of the primary house, which is a single family dwelling and has been for the last 130 years or so. And then you can see the coach house, which sits in behind against the western property line, and then the dogleg connecting out to Stewart Street. If we can move to A1.3 in the drawing set. So here you can see the existing building has been a garage and storage. So there have been no alterations at all since it was built. The proposal is to maintain the basement as is. It's an unfinished basement space with a dirt floor. The main floor, which has an existing staircase up to the second floor, staircase will remain. The intention is to use the main floor of the building for garage and storage, which is its current use. The second floor is where we would add the two-bedroom apartment in accordance with the city's new coach house bylaws. So this would be a two-bedroom apartment unit, likely will become a rental, but will not be severed from the property. It will maintain part of the main property and gain all of its services from the main house. That apartment, because of the existing footprint of the coach house, will be 92 square meters and not 80 square meters as the bylaw currently states. So the reason for the variance is the existing configuration and size of the heritage property. If we can move to A1.4, next slide. This shows the existing elevations. You can see the coach house does have some windows and it has garage door openings and then a central door facing the internal courtyard, which was always a man door that accessed the building. Those buildings, those windows, with the exception of the windows on the west elevation, will be restored, as much as we can use original materials or replaced. The western windows will be bricked in, and we will work with our neighbor to make sure that that is carried out to his satisfaction and that it meets all of the building code requirements, including fire separation and making sure that it would not restrict any potential for him to redevelop or add his own coach house in the future on his property. Moving to A1.6. You can see here the proposed elevations. We are going to add some windows to the structure, and we'll work with the city's heritage staff on how we do that. Mostly just to let some more light and ventilation into that upper floor apartment unit. And again, we haven't revised the plan yet, but those western windows will be bricked in. So those are my images. I believe that this does meet the 4 tests in the Planning Act in terms of meeting the intent of the official plan, the intent of the zoning bylaw, the new intent on the coach houses in the city of Ottawa is minor, and that it really will have almost no impact as an existing building. The added benefit in terms of good planning is that it will be the conservation and adaptive reuse of a heritage building. It will provide additional housing in Sandy Hill, including a kind of a different form of housing that doesn't really exist much in the city yet. There are trees on the property right now. None of those trees will be affected at all by the construction. They're all being protected, so there'll be no negative impact on the property or any landscape. And with the revision to block in those western windows, there will be no impact on any adjacent neighbors or any properties. So that is my submission to the committee. If you have any questions, happy to answer those on behalf of the owner.
So the residential function in this building is going to be on the 2nd floor only.
That's correct.
And what is on the ground floor right now?
The existing ground floor it's mostly storage space. We used to, the owner is my father. That's why I can say we. I lived in that house for a while. It used to be used for parking cars. It hasn't been used, but it is now storage space. It's unfinished and unheated storage space on the ground floor.
Okay. So if we imposed a condition that restricted the residential use to the 2nd floor only in the building,
we would have no objection to that.
Okay. All right. Any of the committee members have any questions? We have another speaker on this application, I believe.
Yes.
Thank
you, Mr. Chairman and members of the panel. My name is Alain Migueles, and I am the son of the property owner at 328 Stewart, Robert Migueles, who is sitting with me here attending the panel. He owns the property at 328 Stewart that abuts the west elevation of the coach house. So we've submitted a letter to the committee outlining our position on the application.
We received that.
So yeah, so just to reiterate, we have no objection and in fact are quite supportive of the project to add a coach house and preserve that heritage building, which is a wonderful heritage component of the 455 Wilbrod property, which is itself quite a splendid heritage property in Sandy Hill. And through telephone and email correspondence yesterday between ourselves and Ms. McDonald, we have arrived at a consensus with respect to the windows located on the party wall. So our submission would simply be to request that the panel reflect in their decision the agreement that those windows be bricked in and that be made a condition of deliverance of building permit. Those are our submissions.
Thank you, Mr. Migueles. If you've come to an agreement with the applicant, is that agreement on paper?
It is on email, Mr. Chairman. It would give us greater comfort to have it also shown on the decision of the committee.
Has that been forwarded to the committee?
Not at this time, but I can endeavor to do so, or if Ms. McDonald wanted to take the lead on that, we would not object. We would obviously like to be copied.
I think it'd be appreciated if you could send us that correspondence.
I will do that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any questions from the committee regarding this? Do we need to, ladies and gentlemen, do we need to impose a condition regarding these windows, or is the mention of the fact that there is an agreement between the abutting property owners sufficient in our decision?
I think, Mr. Chair, if we tie it to the plan as amended to delete the windows on the west elevation, That would be sufficient and possibly also tied to the life of the variance, tie the variance to the life of the coach house structure.
So what we need is an amended set of elevations, Ms. McDonald, that shows that those windows will no longer be there.
I will submit those.
Okay. And I think, Mr. Miguelez, that would solve the issue for you.
Yes, it would, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. So with the additional condition of restricting the residential use to the second floor in the building, all in favor of the application as amended today? Your application is approved. Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
Application on the agenda is item number 4, 6 Harvard Avenue, for which we have received a stat deck. Is the Michelle Armstrong is the agent? Is Armstrong there?
Yes, good afternoon, committee.
Ms. Armstrong, very briefly, could you please explain what you are requesting in your application?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. I do have some slides to present to you. So I'm the co-owner of 6 Harvard Avenue. 6 Harvard Avenue is one half of a semi-detached building located in Old Ottawa South. It's a 3-story building. It's surrounded by 2- and 3-story residential buildings that are a mix of single detached, semi-detached, and duplex dwellings. Next slide, please.
Okay.
And the proposal is to alter the rear roof line to increase the usable space on the 3rd floor. This photo, you can see where 6 Harvard is there in the middle, but our attached neighbor, which is 8 Harvard, has the altered roof line already made. And so what we're seeking to do is actually replicate this same roof projection on our side. So we believe that not only will this increase obviously our objective is to improve the usable space on the 3rd floor, because right now we only have a dormer on the front facade. But we also believe that it will improve the overall symmetry and character of the building. Next slide.
Note that the that variance B reflects an existing condition, the reduced interior side yard setback.
Yes, correct.
And that the change is variance A, and you said that this dormer will exactly match the one that's built in the other half of the semi-detached dwelling.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
To continue, the image before you is just showing another perspective of the roof line. And again, it's just to demonstrate that the roof projection that we're proposing, as we said, will be the same as our attached neighbor, and it will be below the roof line as it's at its current ridge line. So you can see the peak there, which is roughly at about 10.6 meters. So what we're proposing is to continue the same projection across our roof facade.
Okay.
The 2 variants are required, of course, is building height. And the building height is because we're altering the roof line at the rear, it does change how the overall building height is being calculated.
Yeah.
And the side yard, this variance will permit us to effectively build the roof projection on the existing sidewall structure of the building, which is currently a legally non-complying situation.
And we note that there are a number of correspondences from your neighbors in support of the application.
Yes.
And I think you're aware that Building Code Services requiring you to obtain building permits prior to commencement of construction, which is standard stuff for them, and contacting Hydro Ottawa regarding servicing information, which is also a standard response from them. Any comments from the panel on this? Are we prepared to grant this application as presented? All in favor? Your application is granted. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Okay. Next application on the agenda is item 6, 166 Ivy Crescent. I believe Mr. Hamel is the agent for the applicant. And this is an application an application for consent to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels for separate ownership, but a 3-story centralized dwelling currently under construction.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members. My name is Jacques Hamel at 170 Main Street, Ottawa, where you are seeing me live from.
Mr. Hamel, your audio is not good at the moment.
Hello?
Yeah, your audio is breaking up. Keep trying.
Hello? How do you do?
Can anybody else hear Jean? Try again.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, but the audio is breaking up.
Everything is on from my end.
Does can everybody else hear Jean?
Hello?
No, I think we all have a problem.
Oh dear.
Why don't we step this down and another application and you can get this straightened out. Okay. What we'll do is move to item 7 on the agenda, which is 207 Bell Street North, an application to consider the variance to permit an increased floor area for a single commercial occupancy use to accommodate a future tenant within the existing building. And item 7, I believe we have Ms. Tavares is the agent for this application.
Hello,
Hi, your address, please.
it is 207 Bell Street North.
Okay, and we have to administer the oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
Okay. Just for clarification before you begin, in our purpose of application that was included in the notice, we're talking about accommodating a restaurant use as a tenant within the building. We're actually talking about expanding a restaurant use that currently exists within the building. Am I correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so we're going to modify that wording to reflect reality.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. So if you'd like to make a brief presentation on your application, please.
Sure. My name is Josie Tavares and I work as a development planner at Groupe. I also have my development manager, Jen Morrison, on the call to answer any questions in the event they do arise. So I'm here on behalf of the company seeking a minor variance at our property at 207 Bell Street North. And just very quickly, we purchased the building in 2013. Not sure if any of you knew the building before, but we've conducted extensive renovations to kind of bring it up. But we also did we did a zoning amendment to the zoning bylaw back in 2017. And this was to prevent non-residential uses, an associated outdoor commercial patio, and recognize any of the non-compliant site conditions. So that created that 2463 exception to the bylaw that we are looking to vary. So to accommodate our current tenant operating the restaurant, we're requesting a variance to increase the allowable GFA for a single occupancy to 176 meters square, whereas the exception 2463 only permits a maximum of 150 meters square to a single occupancy. So it's a 26 meter square increase over the maximum permitted GFA in the bylaw. And this GFA expansion is just to the kitchen, not to the dining area. So the bylaw restricts a cumulative total commercial area of 350 meters square for the entire property. So I'd just like to highlight that the restaurant is actually the only commercial use within the building. So the total commercial GFA of 176 meters square is the only aspect there. So we're not going over the allowable 350 meters square. So we'll still be meeting the intent of the bylaw to cap the commercial GFA, but also to keep the parking requirement the same and not induce any additional local parking demand.
That's what I was going to ask, what the impact on parking, but if all you're doing is increasing the size of the kitchen.
Correct, yeah. So that the space has always functioned as a restaurant. Our current tenant operating is new, and they brought it to our attention that they just need some more kitchen space to prep and serve their clients more effectively. So the proposed space that we're going to use for the kitchen expansion was previously another commercial space that we have that is now vacant. It's located directly adjacent to the restaurant, so it makes a really seamless and low impact solution. It used to be a former grab and go store with, you could get some chips and that kind of thing. So because there are no changes proposed to the seating area, it had previously accommodated 95 seats and will continue to do so. And again, there's no anticipated change to the vehicular traffic or parking demand as a result. So we just ask that committee please consider the proposed variance, the 26 meters square over the allowable 150 meters square reduction set out in the bylaw. It will allow our restaurant client and tenant to operate more effectively and to better serve their clients, and really just to ensure the continued success of their business. If anybody has any questions, I would certainly be happy to answer.
Any members of the panel have any questions regarding this application? I'm prepared to vote on this on this application as presented to us. All in favor? Your application is approved. Good luck with your project.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bell Street. We'll now deal with item 12 on the agenda, 555 Mutual Street. And the agent for that application is Mr. Segreto. And this is an application for consent to subdivide the property into 3 separate parcels of land to establish separate ownership for each unit of the 2-story, 3-unit townhouse currently under construction. Mr. Segreto.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Michael Segreto, 30 Concourse Gate.
Okay. Could you briefly explain the
oath?
The request for consent?
The oath? The oath?
Yep, I hear you.
Do I have to swear that the signs were up?
Oh, yeah, I guess we do. Hang on. Let me look.
I think I do.
Yeah, you do. I'm gonna have to, well, anyway. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
Okay, so very briefly, Mr. Segreto.
What we have here in front of
Why
you.
should we not require a plan of subdivision?
No, we don't. we have presently what we have a 3-door row which is under construction. All aspects of the performance standards have been met on this. The only thing that I'm asking for is to sever the parcels into 3 equal parcels in order to have separate ownership. And that's the severance that I'm asking for you this morning or this afternoon.
All right. You said this is under construction right now?
It is.
Okay. You're aware of the comments from Building Code Services that they want you to provide documentation confirming fire separations are in compliance with the current Ontario Building Code and meeting the requirements for the party wall with 1 hour continuous fire separation.
I'm aware of that and we'll deal with that. Yep.
And Hydro Ottawa Common Elements Agreement should be prepared to provide each owner with multiple or mutual access cost sharing to the electrical supply.
Yes, I am.
Okay. And there are conditions that have come out of the planning department, Cash and Loop Parkland, independent services, a joint use and maintenance agreement, and a noise warning on title.
Aware of that as well.
Okay. Any questions from the panel on this application for consent? All right. Ready to vote. I'm Mr. Wilder. Your microphone's off, Mr. Wilder.
Mr. Segreto, I just noticed on your one of the documents you submitted, it shows the proposed 2-story townhomes, but yet when it says job title, it says proposed 3-story semi-detached dwellings.
I think that's a spelling error, Mr. Wilder. I'm glad you picked that up, but it is a spelling error. It is a 2-story townhouse, three doors.
Just mentioning if you're filing plans, just that it's not consistent with what you're showing. It shows obviously the semi is not the rows, right? I mean, suggesting the semi is not the rows. So
that's correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions from committee? All in favor of this application for consent? Application's approved, Mr. Segreto.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Shall we try item 6 again with Mr. Hamel, 166 Ivy Crescent? Mr. Hamel.
I'll try again.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Select a speaker.
Can anybody hear this from Jacques, from Mr. Hamel?
Go back to the one you're on.
Mr. Chair, perhaps you could call him.
Yeah. I think Mr. Hamel, you're going to have to do this via telephone. If you could call a coordinator, well, I think the phone numbers are on the application that came. No, you're gonna have to do this by phone. Yeah. Well, if you get in touch with
Mr. Chair,
go ahead.
Mr. Hamel, if you can hear me, the email that was sent with the Zoom invitation will include a phone number as well as a webinar ID and a passcode to get in by telephone.
So what we'll do, Mr. Hamel, is we'll deal with one more application, then we'll get back to you. All right, thank you. The next application on the agenda is our items 10 and 11, 472, 475 Cole Avenue. And I believe the agent is, okay.
Good afternoon.
Hi there. Can you identify yourself and your address, please? Pardon me?
Sareen Shahzadeh. I'm a planner with Novatech.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, Murray Chown, I'm here as well.
Okay. So, all right, this is an application for consent to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land. One parcel containing the existing detached dwelling, proposed to construct a 2-story detached dwelling on the other parcel. And then applications for minor variance to permit reduced lot widths in areas as well as an increased building height and driveway width. One parcel will contain the existing detached dwelling, and it is proposed to construct a 2-story detached dwelling on the other parcel. So if you'd like to give us a presentation, we have the revised site plan, and so that we've eliminated that issue.
For
And
sure.
Pete has reviewed it, so if you'd like to proceed with your application, please.
Yeah, for sure. I submitted a PDF with the documents. Oh, perfect.
Okay.
So just some quick context. This property is within Ward 15. The neighborhood is Westboro and it's zoned R3R. The total area of the lot is about 670 square meters and the frontage is about just over 20 meters. Can we go to the next page? So the proposed development is to sever the lot in half. The existing dwelling is to be retained and the proposed development is on the remainder of the lot. The proposed development is a single detached with an attached garage with access from Cole Avenue. So this proposal facilitates the retention of the existing single detached dwelling. To facilitate this development, variances are required for lot width and lot area for both the existing and the proposed dwellings, and variances are required for building height and the total amount of driveway on the property for the proposed dwelling. So I'll structure this under the 4 tests. The first test is that the proposed development meets the general intent and purpose of the official plan. So the subject site is designated general urban area, which supports infill intensification that enhances and complements the area and the neighborhood. The proposed development is an example of this and meets the first test. For the zoning bylaw, the proposed development meets the performance standards for all setbacks, so front, rear, and interior side yard setbacks. A smaller lot width and lot area will have no impact on the streetscape or the functionality of the site. The requested increase in building height has no impact on the streetscape, and the requested variance for the driveway supports the development of the detached dwelling and has no impact on the streetscape. So in terms of desirability, the property is within 600 meters of the Dominion Transitway station, and it's close to other bus routes and neighborhood amenities. Can we just flip to the 8th page of the PDF? Oh, it's the next one. Oh, one more page, sorry. All right, so in terms of desirability, the required lot width in the R3R zone is 12 meters. What's proposed is 10.4 meters for the proposed development and 9.72 meters for the existing dwelling. And the required lot area is 360 square meters, and what's proposed is 347.2 for the proposed single detached dwelling and 321.8 for the existing dwelling. As you can see in this image, this is consistent with the lot fabric of the neighborhood and allows opportunity for appropriate and compatible infill and intensification. Can we go back one page? So for height, the permitted building height is 8 meters and what's proposed is 8.5 meters. Again, this allows the development of appropriate single detached dwelling on the lot. As you can see in this image, there are examples of buildings on the street on Cole Avenue that appear to have building heights greater than 8 meters. So this variance will not affect the streetscape of Cole Avenue. And then for the driveway, since this property is within the mature neighborhoods overlay, the streetscape character analysis applies. The result of this streetscape character analysis is CBA. So this means that under these provisions, 1/3 of the width of the lot is allowed to be covered by driveways. What we're requesting is to permit more than 1/3 of the lot to be occupied by driveways. 1/3 of the lot width is 3.46 meters and the total proposed width of driveways is 3.86 meters. This would improve the functionality of the existing detached dwelling by providing driveway access to a parking space in the rear yard. This parking space will replace the detached garage that's currently on the property. And again, the request in driveways will have no effect on the streetscape. Can we go to the very last image, please? All right. So the fourth test is that the variances are considered minor in nature. Regarding lot width and lot area, the requested variances will have no effect on the functionality of the site and will have no impact on the streetscape since it fits in with the lot fabric of the street. And the proposed development meets the performance standards for the setbacks. With regards to building height, the variance is to permit an increase of 0.5 meters, which allows the single detached dwelling to be more functional. There's little to no impact on immediate neighbors, and this will not affect the streetscape. And lastly, regarding the total width of driveways on the property, this variance would just help provide access to a parking space in the rear yard for the existing dwelling, which replaces the detached garage. And again, it has no impact on the streetscape, as can be seen in these renderings. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, can I suggest that we go back and show the R plan that actually illustrates the shared driveway so we clearly understand what we, thank you. So Serene, if you wouldn't mind just explaining this image.
Right, for sure. So part 2 is an easement to allow for the driveway that would lead to a parking space in the rear yard of part 3. So the reason for this driveway is because this variance is because the proposed dwelling will have its own driveway leading to an attached garage, whereas the existing dwelling does not have an attached garage and will need the driveway to reach the parking space in the rear yard. So part 2 is an easement in favor of part 3.
And so to be clear, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the width of that driveway providing access to the parking space at the back of the existing dwelling is included in the calculation of driveway width for the new lot for the new house. So the additional driveway width is not for the driveway accessing the proposed new dwelling. The reason for the relief in terms of driveway width is so that we can provide access to a parking space in the rear yard of the existing dwelling. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chown. Mr. Wilder, you had a comment? You're muted, Mr. Wilder.
Yeah, sorry. Question I have is the property at 468 Cole next door, what is the height of that property?
468 Cole, is that the one south?
That's the house. That's the adjacent property. You show a photo of 472 Cole and you're showing 468 Cole. 472 being your client's property at the moment, right?
Right.
468, what's the height of that building?
I'm not sure.
My recollection, Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilder, is that I actually believe that we may have filed applications with respect to that property seeking relief to exceed the 8 meters building height. That application was modified at the committee, was still approved with a variance. I just don't recall the extent of the variance. We certainly believe that the height variance being sought here is consistent with the streetscape. It certainly fits in well with the existing house. And I think it's important to note that to the best of our knowledge, you all know that we're in a very active neighborhood in Westboro, and to the best of our knowledge, there have been no concerns or comments provided from either the community association, say Westboro Group, or any of the neighbors raising any concerns with respect to this proposal.
When you say that in your, and you've used this word before, and I've pointed this out, I guess it's a repeat of rationales you've used before, the maximum height of 8.5 meters for the single allows it to be more functional. Can you elaborate? Are we talking here additional floor space? Is that the idea?
It's not floor space, Mr. Chairman or Mr. Wilder. It's to provide reasonable ceiling heights for each floor.
Oh, so we're going back to what the idea of 9 foot, the higher 9+ foot ceilings. Is that the idea?
I'm not sure what the ceiling heights are in this building, but it's certainly to accommodate what the market demands and what our client is expecting in terms of floor to ceiling heights.
So functional means higher ceilings, basically, in terms of design.
And
Not
to provide,
necessary, but in
And
terms
to
of,
provide appropriate access to the garage without having to do a reverse slope driveway or a significantly reverse slope driveway. They all factor into the height calculation, and the relief that we're seeking, I dare say, wouldn't be visible from the street in any event.
thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from members of the committee? Mr. Wildman?
Just a quick question, Mr. Chair, for staff on the easement and any requirements that, or not, that they felt were appropriate for that easement?
Through the chair, it was discussed on our end in terms of conditioning or similar measures. It was felt that these weren't necessary.
Would the applicant have a concern with something along that lines?
Sorry, what was the question again?
So I'm just a little surprised that there's no condition with respect to the easement. You know, just sort of outlining that, you know, this will be here for some time, and that's the condition under which it was proposed to the committee. And typically you usually see that being rolled up into the decision, but it's silent in this case. And I wondered what the applicant's thought was on that.
So there is a recommended condition with respect to joint use and maintenance. I assume that had to do with the portion of the driveway that is going to be on the property for the new dwelling, but otherwise I'm not sure what condition would be appropriate for the easement.
So I'm just looking at my list, and that's why I asked staff about a condition. And so is staff suggesting that there is a joint use and maintenance agreement here? I take it from your comment that that wasn't the case, or am I mistaken?
No, that is the case. I believe it's condition, sorry, I'm looking at my report right now. I believe it's condition number 4, which mentions joint use of shared driveways. My understanding had been that the Mr. Wildman's question had been in terms of some other condition.
No, I mean, I think a Juma would satisfy that. I'm just a little perplexed. The document I'm looking at right now does not seem to mention that, but I may have an older version of it. So I'm comfortable provided that's in there. I'm sorry for taking up the committee's time.
That's all right. Mr. Neto, what are the conditions that the city is requesting?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm having some trouble unmuting myself. Apologies, I'm still having some muting issues. Would you like me to run through the entire list?
Well, just very briefly. Let's give it to me, 'cause I don't have it on in front of me at the present time.
Okay. Condition number 1, that the owners provide evidence that payment has been made to the City of Ottawa for cash in lieu. Number 2, that the owners provide evidence in the guise of a servicing plan that both the severed and retained parcels have their own independent services. Number 3, that the owners shall provide evidence that a grading and drainage plan has been submitted to the satisfaction of staff. Number 4, and I think this is the one that we're seeking. Number 4, that the owners enter into a joint use, maintenance, and common elements agreement at the expense of the owners. Number 5, that the owner shall ensure that the above mentioned agreement is binding upon all the unit owners. And number 6, that the owners provide evidence to the satisfaction of the manager of planning that the accessory structure, the existing one at 472 Cole, has been demolished.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Neto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I didn't have that, and I apologize. I'm not sure whether you're missing it too, but I don't seem to have that document in front of me. And if I missed that, I'm sorry for that, but I'm glad to hear that it's there.
Okay. So you're happy with having a joint use and maintenance agreement regarding the easement? That'll cover it, Mr. Wildman? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any other comments from the committee on this application? I note that demolition permits will be required prior to the demolition of the detached garage, as you know, and a spatial separation analysis of the south elevation of the existing dwelling is required to determine conformance with the Ontario Building Code necessary to obtain compliance with the code. And yeah, I'm sure you're aware of that as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Chair, if I may, just two questions. One deals with the configuration of the right-of-way. Just wondering why it's not squared off. And the second question is, for the proposed lot size for the existing dwelling, would this be the smallest on Cole Avenue?
I'll let my colleagues answer both of those questions. Thank you.
So in terms of the lot areas, I'm not quite sure if it would be the smallest, but based on, if we can go back to the PDF, page 9 shows just an estimate of the floor areas of the lot areas of properties on Cole Avenue. And there are a few properties that are about 270, 280 square meters. And there are a few around the lot that are 330 square meters as well. So there are smaller and comparable lot areas as well. And in terms of, oh, I guess we're going there. And then in terms of the driveway orientation, we had it to be in line with the existing dwelling so that we can minimize the amount of driveway present on the lot that would have the proposed dwelling.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Mr. Wilder, regarding variance C on the height, in favor or not? Your mic's off. Okay, there you go.
Well, in light of what Mr. Chown says, you know, in the past, I've been reluctant to support an increase in the height. But in this case, if the implication is that it's going to impact, and the whole notion of the reverse drive as he's suggesting here, I'll take his word for it. And if that's what the implication is, if in fact we stay with 8 meters, because I just don't see the need to have 9. I mean, I appreciate in designs to have 9-foot ceilings. I just don't feel it necessitates having to increase the overall height for the sake of design. But if it's going to impact the drive, then I'll support variance C.
Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in on the height relief? Is everybody comfortable? Ms. Oakeshott?
Yes, I will support it in this particular context. I believe the surrounding lot fabric supports that height. It's compatible.
I don't generally approve of height increases of the new build either. However, if the result of denying that is going to be a reverse slope driveway, I think we can I can certainly agree to this, this height increase. Mr. Wildman, you're okay with the height increase?
In this instance, yes, Mr. Chair.
Ms. McLean?
No problem.
Okay, so all in favor of the application for 472, 474 Cole Avenue? Your application is approved. Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Okay. Now, do we have Mr. Hamel on the phone? We're going to be dealing with item 6, 166 Ivy Crescent.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Hamel, we have
Yes.
you. We can hear you. All right.
Awesome.
This application is a consent to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land for separate ownership of a 3-story semi-detached dwelling currently under construction. If you could give us a very brief presentation on the need for consent.
Thank you. Perhaps the easiest way to deal with this would be to go to the survey. We have received in our building a completely compliant semi-detached home on the property. The owners now are interested in severing it for both financial and to be able to sell the properties individually. On the screen now we see the foundations as they've been poured, and they show 2 lots that are virtually equal in area and size, and each half of the semi is built on each new property. So in a nutshell, we're looking for a technical severance of the original property into 2 complying properties for the semi-detached building that's under construction.
The jointly owned spruce tree, is that still there, Mr. Hamel?
I beg your pardon? I'm sorry? The jointly owned something street?
Spruce tree on the site. Forestry Services, jointly owned spruce tree on the right-of-way in front of this address. Applicant will be required to submit a tree disclosure report at the time of building permit and grading approvals submission. Has that been done? Is the tree
Oh, yes.
still there?
We have the building permit. We haven't touched the tree.
So the tree disclosure report has been filed with the city.
Yeah, in order to get a building permit, we had to file it.
Okay, because we were a little confused why this was still in here when you're under construction. Anyway, there are conditions, as you're well aware: cash in lieu, independent services, joint use and maintenance agreement.
Yes.
And the 1-hour fire separation condition.
I'm aware of that. Yes.
Okay. All right. And I don't think there's any other comments. Any questions, comments from the members of the committee on this application? All in favor of granting the application for consent and not forcing Mr. Hamel into a plan of subdivision? Your application is approved, Mr. Hamel.
Thank you very much, and I apologize for the technical glitches.
That's
Thank
okay.
you. Bye.
And I believe that concludes today's agenda. It does. So this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you all. See you in a couple of weeks.